Hey everybody, it's Cauliflower Man here. I'm bringing you a video on cryptocurrencies today. And so in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is what I think the third generation of cryptocurrencies are going to be. Now, the first generation of cryptocurrencies, that was like Bitcoin and Litecoin, basically. That was the first generation. The second generation is basically everything else. Litecoin was basically a clone of Bitcoin, and then there were a couple of clones of that too. But then the second generation coins, that would have been like Ethereum, which did smart contracts, Dash, which was an anonymous coin, Monero, which was an anonymous coin. But that's what the second generation of cryptocurrencies, like the ones that got big, they were either anonymous coins or they were smart contract coins. So what's this third generation of crypto going to be? And so what I think it's going to be, I think it's directly related to the worst unsolved problems in cryptocurrencies, and that's the blockchain bloat and the volatility. Now, the blockchain bloat issue, we've talked about it before, and we've talked about the Lightning Network. I really think for a cryptocurrency to beat Bitcoin, it's going to have to figure out a different way to solve blockchain bloat without going off the blockchain the way Bitcoin does, because that would be superior if they can figure out a way to do it. But the other problem there too is the volatility, and the volatility. This one's a bigger issue because how do you control the price of the currency without handing over control of the currency to a certain group? Because the whole point in cryptocurrencies is that no one controls them, and that gives users a lot of trust in the system because they know, some idiot can't come in and just print a huge amount of money and ruin the system. It can't be done. So how do you solve the bloat and the volatility? And the good news is that they both can be solved by changing the block reward. Now, changing the block reward for the blockchain bloat issue, that gets a little more complicated. The one thing you have to remember is that the higher the block reward is, the more miners you have mining, so the less of a transaction fee that they will force you to pay. That goes hand in hand with this bloat. I know that's not a specific bloat issue, but the more you pay the miners, the less that people will have to pay for bloat. And so, that's always helpful. But again, the issues with bloat, the way you solve it by changing the block reward, if you look at the Lightning Network, what the Lightning Network does is it moves transactions off the blockchain, and then it pays the nodes that do the transactions off the blockchain. So technically speaking, Lightning, all it does, it's an interesting way of changing the block reward and putting transactions off the blockchain, but it uses the block reward fundamentally to help pay users for basically scaling the blockchain is what Lightning does. Now, you can do the same thing if you watched my video on scaling Bitcoin Cash. I talk about a system called Bitcoin Thunder where you could separate the blockchain up into little parts and have it separated, amongst the users so they don't have a full blockchain downloaded, but there's, multiple blockchains downloaded by your users as a whole. So that's another way to change the block reward to solve bloat, because if you did it that way, then you would have a block reward that would get paid to people who have servers that have downloaded the full blockchain. So that would be another way to use the blockchain reward to solve bloat. But the real interesting question comes when you're talking about volatility, because volatility, even the bloat issue is an issue right now, but hopefully computers and stuff will improve enough that they'll be able to figure something out with that. So the blockchain bloat is an issue, but it's something that can be fixed. The volatility question, that's a little harder to fix. And so I'm going to talk about different ways that you can fix it. And method number one for changing or for stopping the volatility within cryptocurrencies is a steady exponential growth of the cryptocurrency. And the first thing you're going to notice about all of these methods, they all end up having more cryptocurrency created than something like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a 21 million cap limit on it, it's a hard cap. You can't get more than 21 million Bitcoin. That's a fact. The thing that sucks about that is that however much your economy grows, like if you're using Bitcoin as money and your economy grew 4%, in order to match the 4% economic growth, because there's no more Bitcoin being created, the value of Bitcoin has to increase by 4%, and everyone who does business will then receive a 4% business monetary loss due to the fact that Bitcoin increases in value. So all I mean by that is if Bitcoin increases in value by 4% a year, then every business will have to take away 4% on their end profit line in terms of money or in terms of Bitcoin, and so it really hurts businesses. Like that's a lot. I mean, that's still way better. Like if we had a monetary system based on Bitcoin, that's way better than a fiat system. Fiat systems are retarded, but Bitcoin can definitely be improved upon. So the method number one was just steady exponential growth, and all I mean by that is you would pick a percentage, be like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5%, and then your cryptocurrency will always grow by that percentage every year. So if you picked 2%, then within this year, 2% of the total coins in circulation will be mined. And the thing that that does is that over time, an economy, generally speaking, has, you know, about an average rate of growth over a long period of time. It has its ups and downs, but eventually it'll go back to that average rate of growth. And so if you have a steady exponential growth in the short term, you might have volatility, but in the long term you can expect price stability. And the thing that's really good about this steady exponential growth rule is that you just start with the rule and then like you just follow it. It's real easy to do. There's no variation in the mining reward from, you know, block to block. So it's very easy, very simple to do. The problem with it is that if you just have a steady exponential growth of the cryptocurrency supply, you can have some short-term volatility. And again, volatility is not good in money because the whole purpose of money is to basically act as a measurement for economic calculation. Ludwig von Mises has a great book on this. It's called Economic Calculation in the Socialist Commonwealth. It's not specifically, you know, about what we're talking about here, but in his arguments he says basically if you could use value as money, like a util, a unit of utility as money, that would be perfect, but you can't. So what we know, like if a unit of value is the perfect type of money, then a unit of value by definition has equal value throughout time. So a perfect type of money would be the type of money that has the closest to equal value over a long period of time. So that's what we want. And so again, that's why we want the steady exponential growth of method one. But again, the volatility still occurs in the short term with method number one. So for method two, what you do is called CPI-based supply growth. Now this is sort of what central banks do, so a lot of people really aren't going to like this, especially because like the CPI-based coin rate supply growth completely is centered on and completely dependent upon whoever creates the algorithm that determines the CPI. So whoever controls the CPI controls this currency. And so if you have, you know, some bad actor in control of the CPI who's just basically lying to you, then, you know, everything's become centralized and you have a lot of trouble with that. The good thing about method number two is you can, like, even though you can't exactly, this is one thing that I always find funny, you can never exactly figure out the rate of inflation. Economists always like to say, oh, this year the rate of inflation was 2%. You can't do that just because you're adding things that have different denominations. Like you can't add 2 apples and 4 oranges together. What do you get? You have 2 apples and 4 oranges. You can't add those together. So you can't actually find the real CPI, but you can basically come up with assumptions about what the CPI would be, and you can estimate it, and so you can have more real-time updates to make sure there's no short-term volatility. But the problem again with something that's CPI based is that tends to again, like you put all that power in the people who control the CPI, and so they'll use it to make sure there's no short-term volatility, but a lot of times they'll create long-term volatility later on. So method number two has its weaknesses as well. But then our third method, this is probably the most complex method. This one I think has the most promise, but it'll be by far the hardest to implement. This is the hash rate based supply growth for a cryptocurrency. So if you're wondering what this is, the hash rate based supply growth for a cryptocurrency, all that means is that as your hash rate grows, so does your supply of your cryptocurrency. So let's say your hash rate on your cryptocurrency doubled, and I'm just going to be making these numbers up. I don't have any sort of scientific reason for picking these numbers, but let's say the rule is for every doubling of your hash rate, the coins or your block reward increases by, 10%. Let's just say 10%. I don't know why I picked those numbers. That's just what I picked. The good thing about this is that the hash rate of your cryptocurrency almost only increases when the price of the cryptocurrency increases, or just when interest in the cryptocurrency increases. But so as you have an increased hash rate, if the price is going up, which is usually the case when your hash rate increases, then the increased supply growth of your cryptocurrency will actually work to push the price down. And then the other thing, if the hash rate goes down, then you will create less coins this year, and so then the pressure on the price of your cryptocurrency will actually be pushing it back up. So again, whether or not your cryptocurrency is going up or down in value, a hash rate based supply growth will work, and we'll talk about those individually here so that you get a little bit more information on all of those. So again, just going back to the worst problems in cryptocurrency, it's bloat and volatility. So bloat raises fees and limits transactions. You can only have so many transactions. So the question is, how do you get rid of bloat? And generally speaking, you get rid of bloat by more complex algorithms like Lightning, or by my idea for Bitcoin Thunder, where you separate the blockchain amongst your nodes. It doesn't really matter, but bloat's hard to fix, and that's somewhat outside the scope of this video, but you can do it. The volatility, that one is also hard to fix, but this one, it's like we all know what the fix is. You have to change the supply of coins being created, being mined by the miners. So how do you do that? And again, the question is just like what you want to mimic are the market forces or central banks. Now I know people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, I hate central banks. I hate central banks too. But the premise of a central bank is not bad. It's just the way that they implement it. And I mean, when I say the premise isn't bad, I mean like the idea of having something to help stop volatility of a currency is a good idea. The entire concept of a central bank is retarded, and you should never have a central bank. But I understand why people argue for it, is all I'm saying. So I'm going to show you guys how to mimic what the market does or what central banks do. So again, the way that we're going to mimic this, it's all going to be about changing the block reward. So the block reward, basically with the high block reward, you get more miners and you get lower fees. With a low block reward, you get less miners and you get higher fees. So high block reward means more security and lower fees, so that's usually better, but obviously you can't pay the miners too much. But the problem with Bitcoin and most cryptocurrencies is eventually their block reward drops to zero. So once the block reward is zero, you're going to have very few miners and very high fees no matter what cryptocurrency you're using. And then this final point here, again, that's just you can also, to solve the bloat problem, because we don't talk about the bloat problem other than what I'm going to just say right here. We don't talk about the bloat problem that much in this video, but the only real thing you can do with a block reward to solve the bloat problem is you add a block reward for blockchain verification. And all I mean by that is if you go the Bitcoin Cash route and you make your blocks much bigger, that way you can fit more transactions onto the blockchain. You might make the blocks so big that each user can't actually download the full blockchain individually, and so all you would have to do is create servers that would download the blockchain, and you would pay these servers part of the block reward. So again, you can fix for generation 3 cryptocurrencies. I think all you have to do is switch up the block reward, and I think it's all going to be done through the block reward. But again, that's just my thoughts on it. So again, let's go through these 3 methods now for fixing the volatility. So method number 1, again, method number 1 is it's the K% rule. I like to call it Milton Friedman's K% rule, because Milton Friedman had this rule that the central bank should just increase the amount of currency in supply by a certain percentage of the total currency already existing. I think his percent that he went with was 3. I think that's a great number. I have my issues with Milton Friedman on him wanting a central bank in the first place, but if you're gonna have a currency that's sort of fiat, or its creation is just dictated by code or by some personal or just by some person, I think that it should be just limited at just a certain percentage. I think that's always a great way to do it. So again, the other thing that's great about this is that it's easily predictable. So people who are wondering, like how much cryptocurrency, or how much is the new supply of cryptocurrency going to affect like what I already have, and that question can be a big question in cryptocurrencies that use like block halvings, where one day the block reward is 50, the next day the block reward is 25. That makes things not so predictable. But if everything is just very simple and the rate of coins grow at 3% a year, it's very easily predictable, and it allows room for growth. You can have growth equal to whatever percentage you have the coin supply increase by, and you won't run into the problem with Bitcoin where the value of your currency rises faster than your businesses can make profit in that currency or whatever. The other thing too is that it allows you to make clones of it. So if you're using Milton Friedman's K% rule for a cryptocurrency, you can create multiple cryptocurrencies and be like let's say the name of your cryptocurrency is the Milton coin, I guess, or we'll call it the Friedman coin. If you make a Friedman coin, you could have Friedman coin 1 and that would just mean a Friedman coin that its coin supply increases by 1% a year. Then you could have a Friedman coin 2, which increases by 2% a year. Then Friedman coin 3, which increases by 3%. Friedman coin 4, Friedman coin 5. You can keep going on and on. And the thing that's really good about this is that you don't necessarily know what percentage increase in the coin supply is best. So if you just release a bunch of them, like if you released Friedman coin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you release them all at once, just let the market decide, and it'll figure out which one is best for the market. So you don't actually have to figure it out. You just release all these into the market at once and let the market decide. And then the final thing about the Milton Friedman's K% rule, it's the only rule that I have on this page where the rule ensures no abuse of the system, because it's really easy to follow. If you just create, if you had a 3 as the K% that you were using, then you would just make sure that every year the coin supply increased by 3% every year. And so long as it did that, you would know that the system is working. But if we were using something like our next method, and this method number 2, I call it the CPI-based central bank model. This model is obviously manipulatable, yeah, I guess that's the way you say it, manipulatable. But anyways, you can manipulate it, but that's the point. The reason why you want to manipulate the CPI-based central bank model is because you want to eliminate the short-term volatility. So this ensures better control of volatility, sort of, and bugs too, I guess, just because you have control over the currency as it's going. It's not a hands-off approach. It's a hands-on approach. But the problem with this is that the authority for the network bestows responsibility on whoever the authority is for the network. So whoever you have controlling the coin supply, like, the coin is completely based on that person. If that person screws up, the coin fails. And that's not true in something like the method number 1, the Milton Friedman's K% rule. So I always like the Milton Friedman's K% rule. This one can be useful. There's a lot of, you need to trust whoever's running this one, though, so I don't really consider it to be the greatest cryptocurrency method. If you used a CPI-based cryptocurrency, it probably wouldn't take off, just because the people in those markets don't really like that sort of thing. But then you can look at method number 3 here, and method number 3 is the variable hash rate model. I call this the gold model because it is based off the production rates of gold and how they react to market forces or market changes in supply and demand. A lot of people say that Bitcoin is like gold because there's less and less of it mined every year. That's kind of retarded, because there's an infinite amount of gold in the universe. You just have to get off of planet Earth to go get it. So it just becomes harder and harder to get. It becomes more and more costly to get, but you'll never run out. So you can't say something that has a limited supply is the same as gold, because that's completely false. You're just making that up. So method number 3, the variable hash rate model, the reason why it's like gold is because what it does is that when the hash rate rises for the cryptocurrency, the block rate or the block reward rises as well. So this is sort of twofold. Not only does it deal with the volatility, because when the price of your currency goes up, it creates more of that currency, so then because you have more supply, it should help to push the price back down to where it was before. So it helps with the volatility. But the second thing it does is it creates more security. And the reason why is that if you have more coins that are created when the hash rate gets higher, then people are going to want to mine more when the hash rate gets higher. Now, normally speaking, the higher the hash rate goes for a cryptocurrency, the worse it is to mine, because you're going to be getting less coins. Now, it sort of evens out because the hash rate only goes up when the price of the coin goes up, and so there's sort of that, but it's not as good as if when the hash rate went up, you would create more coins, because the price of the coins would still be rising at first until the new coins got into the marketplace and helped to push the price down. But it creates, not only does it stop volatility, but a variable hash rate model gives the system more security whenever the hash rate goes up. And again, like I said before, when the hash rate goes up, the price is generally going up for the cryptocurrency. So you want more security then. So it's just a really good thing. This variable hash rate model, I think it would be perfect if someone could figure out how to do it. Another reason why I think it's just great is, again, it just mimics gold mining. So when the price of gold gets too high or gets too low, people stop mining it. And if you don't have people mining it, there's no new supply being created. So then slowly the price will start to rise, because demand will rise, but there's no supply coming to meet the demand. Conversely, if the price of gold rises, then people start producing a lot more gold. There's a lot more investments made into gold mining, and so there's a lot more gold that starts getting created, which helps create a downward pressure pressure on the price. So again, method number 3, this variable hash rate model, it is specifically based off the way that gold is produced. And again, that last point I already talked about it again. Network security is better linked to demand. When the hash rate gets higher, that's generally because the price is rising, and when the price rises, you want the security of the network to rise. If you're giving out more coins for the block reward when the hash rate gets higher and the price is rising, then that means you're also giving more security to the network, because it will induce more miners to start mining your cryptocurrency. So again, I think number 3, the variable hash rate model is the best model, but the problem with it is it's really like, how would you implement it? Where do you start? Like, how much does your hash rate have to increase compared to how much you want your block reward to increase? I don't have any sort of answer for that question. I just think it's a really interesting idea. But again, it's something that it's like the Milton Friedman model. If you created a good enough system, you could just start the system and say, every doubling of the hash rate, we increase the block reward by, let's say it's 15% this time. And you could just keep it like that forever. And so that would just ensure whenever the block or the hash rate goes up, so does your block reward. Again, it's not the easiest thing to do, but this is my belief on what the next cryptocurrencies, like the problems they're going to address. And again, I call this my 3rd gen crypto video, I guess. I call the next generation of crypto the 3rd gen. And again, just all these like the big problems that they got to solve, it's the bloat and the volatility. The bloat, it was a little bit outside of the scope of this video, but hopefully after watching this video, you've got a pretty good idea of different methods to stop volatility in cryptocurrencies. Again, method number 1 was the steady exponential growth method, the Milton Friedman K% method. So you just literally choose a percentage to grow the currency by every year. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%. Doesn't really matter. And again, it's always best to actually release a bunch at the same time and just let the market determine which one is best. Method number 2 is the CPI-based supply growth. This is more like what central banks do. You're going to have a lot of trouble selling that in the cryptocurrency market. But the thing about the CPI-based supply growth is you can change it as you go, so it makes it easier in that regard. And then the final method is the hash rate-based supply growth, and that just means as the hash rate increases, so does the supply of the cryptocurrency, or so does the block reward for the cryptocurrency, but as the hash rate decreases, so does the block reward for the cryptocurrency. In that way, the block reward is supposed to mimic the demand for the cryptocurrency itself. So as demand increases for the cryptocurrency, so does the block reward, which helps to put downward pressure on the price and helps to stop volatility. And again, method number 3 increases the security. Actually, if you look at all these methods, methods number 1, 2, and 3, they all increase security because they all increase the block reward. So they all increase security. So it's not like you're giving something up that really matters. When you do these sort of things, the only thing that you're giving up is the advantage that the first users have. So that's why a lot of the Bitcoin users don't like it, because they were the first users and they don't want to make a switch to the system because it hurts them personally. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it sort of helps you understand where cryptocurrencies are going. Again, this is just my own personal view. You might have different views yourself, so if you think that cryptocurrencies are going in a different direction for this next generation of cryptocurrencies that will come out, let me know in the comments below.